The Rise and Shine podcast series is made possible by the generous support of Bonnie Vozar of Chicago, Illinois.
Of course, it's easy to get frustrated when we don't see the results that we expected or yearned for. But what if we reminded ourselves that we are only responsible for the tending and nurturing and planting of the trees, but the fruits of our labors may just not occur in our lifetimes?
This is Rise and Shine, a podcast that offers timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations to fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note. Here is Adrienne Gold Davis.
There's a famous story in the Talmud about an old man who's digging holes to plant fig trees in his garden. So somebody walking by sees this elderly man planting the tree, and he asks him about the purpose of his labor. He says, "You're 100 years old. Why are you bothering to plant trees that you'll never benefit from?" Now, according to the Midrash, the old man tells him that if he merits to eat from them, then he will. And if he dies before the trees bear fruit, then his children and their children will. That just as trees were planted for him, so he will plant trees for the generations to come. You know, I think of this story every year as we enter the season of Tu B'Shvat, the day that, according to Jewish tradition, commemorates the new year for trees. See, according to our traditions, Tu B'Shvat is the day that the sap begins to rise in the dormant tree, spelling the end of winter. And even if the tree appears bare and lifeless, it is indeed beginning its renaissance, and growth is imminent. Originally, this holiday was important because it marked an agricultural milestone that Jews used to track the age of a tree. And this was an important thing to keep track of, since according to our tradition, we don't eat the fruits of a tree for its first 3 years. However, today it also comes to remind us that even when things seem dormant and without life, even at times where it feels like winter is interminable, that one's plantings and efforts seem to refuse to bear fruit, that we're in a state of complete stasis, we must remember that growth is in fact pending and will soon unfurl its leaf and flower. As parents, I find this such a useful concept. How many of us have labored to plant values and ideals into our children which appear to not have taken? How many of us have repeated the same request, asked and pleaded for the same thing? How many of us have lost our tempers, raised our voices thinking, "No one listens to me till I'm screaming," only to go through that same thing the next day and the next and the next? So why do we get so angry? Why do we feel so disrespected and dishonored when our loved ones keep making the same mistakes and missteps despite our repeated warnings and requests? Well, I believe it's because we think that the stage from planting to bearing fruit should be immediate. We don't understand that our best efforts, despite the watering and the pruning and the feeding and the caring, well, they can take much longer than we think. When we understand that an elaborate root system is actually developing underground, a root system that will allow for the sudden growth spurt that happens when we least expect it, well, then we grow stronger and less agitated. Instead, we actually believe that parenting is a short game, that just because behaviors haven't changed, that our work has been in vain. It makes us feel impotent and ineffective, and we despair, and that despair can turn to rage. But if we took a Tu B'Shvat approach to raising our children, and we came to believe that the sap is rising even when the tree itself seems bare, well, we would approach the work of parenting as a long game. We would, like the old man in the Talmud, continue to plant our trees and nurture them, even if we did not merit to eat of its fruits in our lifetimes. This is also the Jewish way when it comes to thinking about nation building. We continue to plant and to tend and to nurture even if we do not get to see the outcome in our lives, because our lives, our please God 120 years, are just not the full picture. We are part of a chain that began with Abraham and Sarah and continues long after our link is past. In a world of instant gratification where we believe that the effort is directly commensurate with the outcome, well, of course it's easy to get frustrated when we don't see the results that we expected or yearned for. But what if we reminded ourselves daily that we are only responsible for the tending and nurturing and planting of the trees, but that the fruits of our labors may just not occur in our lifetimes? Would we be more patient and more fulfilled in our jobs? Would our expectations be less dashed, but our commitments be more enhanced? Can we bring ourselves to a place where we're content knowing that planting and tending is mandatory, but that enjoying the fruits of our labors might be the privilege of our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren? You see, so much is happening beneath the surface in life. A tree in North America that appears lifeless in February can actually be on its way back to life. And just as the rooster crows just a moment before dawn, just as the Jewish day begins at night in the darkness, so it is with human development. It's always darkest just before the dawn. When the Hebrew slaves left Egypt and got to the Sea of Reeds, they were commanded to move forward and enter its unfathomable depths. No one would go except a man named Nachshon from the tribe of Yehudah. We learn that the sea did not split immediately, but not until he had the sensation of drowning, when the waters had covered his nose. It was only then, as he continued forward, despite his fear, but steeped in faith in his creators, that those waters split, and so it is for us. We have to walk through that sea as parents, realizing that the sensation of drowning doesn't mean that we will drown. It means we must keep walking, and the miracles will manifest in their time. This week, can we examine where our frustrations in parenting have led us to believe that all hope is gone? That the fruits of our labors will never appear? Can we continue to tend and nurture and water and prune and keep walking through that sea, even when we feel like we're going under? Because God is faithful to our efforts, even if we don't see the outcome at this moment. The sap is rising. Happy Tu B'Shvat.
Thanks for listening to Rise and Shine. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to Momentum Podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join Adrian again next time for more timeless wisdom and uplifting meditations that fill your heart, feed your soul, and start your day on a positive note.
This podcast was made possible by the generous support of Bonnie Vozar of Chicago, Illinois. Spread the wisdom. Inspire Jewish individuals around the globe by supporting Momentum's podcasts. To sponsor, contact podcast@momentumunlimited.org. You're listening to a Momentum podcast. For unlimited inspiration, wisdom, and empowerment, visit momentumunlimited.org.